Today is going to be the first time that I'm going to review an Antec case that actually supports only up to micro ATX motherboard, so you can also squeeze in a mini ITX just like I did right here, but it's quite different. So we have a completely interesting front panel which has an addressable RGB front, and you can adjust it with the LED button on top. But let's go step by step and check out all the details first from the interior, and then we're going to go from the outside. As you're probably aware, today we're going to talk about ANTEC DRACO 10 case, which kind of does really look outstanding. Now, one thing I do have to mention, and it's kind of already normal for the new line of Antec cases, it supports two 120mm fans right here on top of the power supply shroud, so you can give more air to your graphic card. Even though it does look kind of smaller when it comes to the clearance and space and how much the front fans can actually push to those two fans, but it's okay. It's up to you to test it out and see if that suits you quite alright. So here is the interesting part. You could do wonders here. You could place a 280 radiator on top, you could place a 280 radiator on front, up to, of course, because you can place 240 both ways. Now I do have to say that the micro ATX kind of fills out the empty space here instead of mini ITX that I have right here, and you have additional 2.5-inch bracket support for your SSD. Now here's the catch. I placed a 280 radiator on top, and just because of the Antec memory and that side pins that are a bit longer, so they kind of extend the height of the RAM sticks. It kind of goes inside of the fan, but that's not the problem. If you go with any other RAMs, it could fit quite nicely. So the standard thickness of the radiator and the fans, it could fit nicely in. Unfortunately, you don't have space to connect anything at the top of the motherboard, so my suggestion is do everything before placing the radiator. Even connecting the pump or anything that you have here on the radiator, fans or similar stuff like that. Now on the front, as I said, you could place 280 or 240mm radiator, but also you could place three 120mm fans. And this is kind of interesting. I mean, I placed a 280 at the top and three 120 at the front. It does have a bit of I would say a smaller space here for the top fan, but it can fit. It could definitely fit. You just need to reorganize everything. Now, what surprised me the most is the distance from the front panel to this part, because they actually separated the fans from the front panel so it can take more air and create a nice intake. So there's another thing, GPU length. You can go up to 360mm, and if you place standard 25mm fans on front, you go up to 335mm. So as you can see, I placed the Supreme X RTX 3070 GPU inside, and it fits just perfectly. You have maybe half a centimeter of space right here. It's quite, I would say, somewhat compact. On top you have a magnetic dust filter, and on front you have to remove the front panel. You have also a magnetic dust filter. You have 4 PCI expansion slots right here at the back side, standard for micro ATX, and here at the bottom you have an opening for a power supply. I know some of you don't like it, some of you do, but it's all up to personal preferences. And that's basically it. So let's sum up the interior. Up to three 120mm fans or 280 or 240 radiator. You have a 2.5-inch SSD bracket on the side, and on top you can place 280 or 240mm radiator. At the back you get a 120mm fan, which is 3-pin DC. This is also the only case from Antec that you get only one fan, apart from all the cases that I reviewed so far in the last year. Now for the top I/O panel, you have the power on button, you have the LED button which changes the front panel lights, you have two USB 3.0, and you have two 3.5mm jacks. One is for your headset and one is for your microphone. At the back you have additional two 2.5-inch SSD brackets, which you could use for your SSDs, of course. You have quite nice clearance for cable management, so you can reroute everything. And at the bottom of the power supply shroud you have a, I would say, modular hard drive bracket, so you could, if you decide to place a radiator on front, you can move it towards the power supply, and if you go for a longer power supply, you can move it towards the fans. So it depends up to you, and you can place one 3.5-inch hard drive at the bottom. As you can see, today's theme is purple, white and black, so something a bit more different that I usually do, but it's kind of cool, goes with everything nicely. So as I stated, the LED button at the top, you can adjust everything as you wish, so switching through the colors and going randomly what you decide depending on what you want to have inside. For instance, like I did for the complete purple interior and placing the purple LED strip on front. So let's check it out. Here we go. Now, one thing, it's quite interesting, the temperatures. So I used the same thing that I used in the past case that I reviewed. So we have the 10700K and we have the RTX 3070 Supreme X. The temperature on the processor went up to 60 Celsius degrees, the GPU went up to 66, 67 Celsius degrees. But here's the thing, since I placed that the fans are controlled completely with the NZXT, they went up to extreme RPMs and the noise was just unbearable. So when we use something that, let's say I placed the speeds up to bearable sound level, the temperature on the CPU went up to 65 and the GPU stayed at 67, 68, so it's not that big of a deal. All in all, I would say that these openings right here on the front are actually quite large, and the distance between the fans and the front fins is quite enough to get quite decent intake, I would say, and to cool, first to give nice fresh cold air to your GPU, and then blowing inside to cool the top radiator for the CPU. So yeah, it's quite interesting for a smaller case where you can place 280 on top, 280 on front radiator. You can place two additional 120mm fans on your power supply shroud. Actually, the power supply shroud has quite nice amount of space for, I don't know, cable management, to place those extra cables, or for hard drives if you're still using those. And the interior is quite nice. You have loads of possibilities to place your cables. For instance, the ITX has a special hole here for 24-pin, the micro ATX has additional hole for the 24-pin, so everything is carefully calculated, and at the top you also have enough clearance holes for cable management and to rerouting the cables, except when you place a radiator on top. I would suggest going with 240 maybe, just because you can definitely save up on the height of the RAMs, without a doubt, because that extra space that 280 takes up, it might interfere with some high profile RGB RAMs. So yeah guys, Draco 10, this is the Constellation series from Antec, something new and something refreshing, I would say, which also looks quite cool. Quite easy, quite simple, but quite cool, especially with the front, and shame it doesn't have at least two addressable RGB fans on front, just so you can see this part right here. But all in all, I'm quite satisfied, and really cool that they placed an opening here for the 8-pin cables for your GPU. It's basically like they were centering it right here where it's supposed to be. Most likely they were, but I'm just saying it like this. And finally, the link for the Antec Draco 10 is in the description below. Don't forget to check it out. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the thumbs up button for the Draco 10 case from Antec. And of course, click the notification bell for future videos. Thank you for watching again, and hopefully see you in another one. Bye bye.